Tonight, we're going to maybe do something that's a little bit different in the Muslim community. It's something that maybe we should have been doing for a long time, and in some communities we have, but sometimes we get caught up in just pushing ourselves into a silo or boxing ourselves in and practicing our faith and not really looking at what it means to step outside of the masjid, outside of the Islamic center, outside of the family, to build infrastructure that helps empower the Muslim community, that helps move the Muslim community forward. We're going to do this through a process, and I just want to give you a quick overview of the way the process will go so we can follow together. It's going to be a little bit interactive, and I know some of us are not used to doing art projects anymore. We think it's something that we left behind in school, but tonight we're going to ask that you guys take, Said, can you pass these to people? I'm going to get pencils. We're going to ask that you take some time in a few minutes to write something or draw something down. I'm not going to tell you what yet. After that, we're going to move through history. We're going to move through prophetic examples and examples from the A'imma, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, that talk about and prove why we need to understand our roles as Muslims in a non-Muslim society and the importance to be community organizers to build power. We're going to talk a lot about power tonight, because we believe as community organizers that when we don't build power, that they push us and they keep us in a masjid. And that's not what we want. We want to think about ways to build outside of the masjid. Excuse me. And then we're going to talk about what it means to be civically engaged, to engage the Muslim community, what it looks like to have wins, to have victories. Because it's important to not only have theory, or not only think about what it looks like if we did have power, it also is important for us to understand what it looks like to win. Because if you keep fighting and you never win, you're going to give up at some point. And then we're going to talk about the importance of stepping outside of our comfort zone and bridging with other communities, and why it's so important that we as Muslims have to step out, especially in non-Muslim communities, in non-Muslim lands. We need to step out and build bridges with people, but real bridges. And we're going to talk about what it means to build a real bridge, not something that's reactive, something that's proactive. And then we're going to talk about, we're going to cycle back, and we're going to have another thing that we hand out to you to fill out, to do another little art project. And what we hope from the first paper that you fill out to the last paper, that you get a better sense or an understanding of how important it is to build power. And that's going to be the focus of tonight, because when we talk about civic engagement, when we talk about empowering the Muslim community, when we talk about bridge building, when we talk about forming relationships, when we talk about building infrastructure and not just structures, it's all about power. It's about empowering the Muslim community so that we don't have to be marginalized anymore. And I know that we're not in the United States. Excuse me, we're in Canada, somewhere that might be more accepting of the Muslim community. But I want you to understand where we're coming from as well. We live in a land that doesn't have a prime minister or a leader that respects our community. We're in a country that, you guys know what the President of the United States says. Have you guys all heard about the way Trump talks about Muslims? You guys have heard it. It's not fun. And it's not fun being part of a community that's continually shoved down, pushed down, downtrodden, and marginalized. So we'll start first. Sister Sukaina will begin our project.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you again for having us here. And in our list of gratitude, I want to thank where's Sayyid Mahdi for acknowledging the indigenous land that we are on as well. You don't hear that very often from the Muslim community, so mashallah, it's very beautiful to respect and acknowledge that. So in addition to everything that Hajj Reza has shared, one of the things we talk about when we talk about organizing in communities is that it has to come from the community itself. It can't be that somebody from the outside comes in and says, oh, this is what's wrong, this is what your problem is, we're going to fix it for you. No, it has to come originally from the community, from the needs of the communities, the ideas, the pains, the struggles, the observations. So our first activity is going to be about that. So we're going to ask you, and you all are getting a piece of paper that's handed out to you, and our first activity for the night, and we hope everyone will participate and at least write or draw something down. But we want to ask you, what is the world as it is that you see right now? Whether it's in your town here in Surrey or Richmond or Vancouver, in Canada, in North America, globally, what are you seeing in this world? So I'll tell you, in our hometown of Fresno, I see extreme poverty. I see 1 in 5 children in Fresno live in poverty, and even in California, actually, 1 in 5 children live in poverty. In my town in Fresno, I see terrible, terrible air quality, and Abu Mahdi can tell you about that if you have questions about how bad the air quality is in Fresno. In Fresno, I see high rates of homelessness, and a lot of people who are actually living on the streets because they can't afford healthy housing. So we're asking you, what do you see in your communities? Do you see homes in your, mashallah, the homes we drove here were amazing, but maybe in some of the communities in Vancouver, it's not like that. And you see people struggling with housing. Maybe, you know, alhamdulillah, you have universal health care in Canada. We do not have that in America. So we see a lot of people who are struggling with access to health care. So we want to ask you, either draw a picture for us, draw some symbols, write a couple words, whatever you feel comfortable with. What is the world as you see today? What do you see in your community? What are maybe issues that you and your family and your friends have faced? I know that you have a very accepting prime minister, but maybe there's racism in your community still. Either way, you still struggle with dealing with hijab or being a Muslim in this community. Do you see poverty around the world? Do your families back home struggle with being in a war-torn community?
In the 29th verse of Surah Al-Qasas, in the story of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, right? Throughout this chapter. And in this verse, Prophet Musa alayhi salam, he sees a fire. And he tells his people, I'm going to go up. What does he say? He doesn't say, I'm going to go up and I'm going to speak to Allah. He doesn't say, I'm going to go up and I'm going to receive a law that I'm going to bring down to people. He goes up, actually 2 purposes. Does anybody know? What are the 2 purposes? What is he going for? When he sees the fire, he says, I'm going for...
Catch fire and bring fire, just make fire.
Yep. So number 2, actually, the second reason is that he's going to bring some fire so people can have warmth. And the first one is news. He says, I might get some direction or some news. I'm going to go up there. I might get some news or direction from you because there might be people up there. And number 2, I'm going to bring some fire. It's a very practical purpose, right? He's not going up there to free the children of Israel, right? He's not going up there to free the people whom Moses has enslaved. He's going up there just because he wants some fire. And when he goes up, what happens? He has an encounter. He's disrupted. His entire life is disrupted because he has an encounter with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who tells him, I have a mission for you. You think you came here for some fire, and I have a mission for you. And what does that mean for us today? It can mean so many things. But all of us are either immigrants, children of immigrants, maximum in this room, 2nd generation, but probably 1st or generation immigrants. And most people immigrated to the Americas for one of 3 reasons, basically. Number 1, they might have come here to get an education. They might have come here to make some money, either to make money and stay here or make money and send it back home. Number 3, they might be escaping war or violence or a dictator, and they're going to come here. All of those reasons, the goal of the person is to go back. That's why they always say back home. I'm going to come make money and I'm going to go back home when I'm ready. I'm going to come get educated. I'm going to go back home. I'm going to come until the war is over. I'm going to come until the oppression is over, or I'm going to come until the dictator is overthrown, and then inshallah I'm going to go back home. As such, we never really built infrastructure. But if we take the process that Moses went through, that Musa alayhi salam, that he went through, that Musa was just going to go to school to get money or to escape a dictator just like us. He went for a practical reason. He went for fire. And then Allah told him, no, I have a greater meaning for you. You're going to go and you're going to free my people. We might have come here for money. We might have come here for education. We might have come here for freedom or safety. But now we're here. Now we're a group of Muslims amongst a lot of non-Muslims. And Allah is telling us we have something greater. Now you're here. Now you have to make the call. You're not here just to make some money. You're not here just to get educated or to escape war. You're here to, now you need to call people towards me. You need to call people towards Islam. You need to call people towards Allah. You need to call people towards justice. And what that looks like is very different. Sometimes fighting for justice means fighting for immigrant brothers and sisters who are just seeking basic rights. Sometimes fighting for justice means fighting for better education, or it could mean fighting for opportunities, or it might be unifying, or pulling together workers so that they have better money or better benefits. There's a lot of different things that might be our purpose. And we thought we had a purpose, we came and we got another purpose. So us as Muslims, we have to look that we might have come here for a lot of reasons, or our parents might have come here for a lot of reasons, but we have to first work and we have to think, we have to ponder, we have to pray, we have to study, we have to evaluate ourselves and think what our real purpose to be here is, because nothing is by accident, right? We believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created us, He has a plan for us. It's not an accident that we live here. It's not an accident that we're here tonight. It's on purpose. So what is the purpose? It can't be just so that we would sit in a mosque and pray, or so that we would make some money and have fun with our family. There must be a purpose. There must be a greater purpose. And we have to work to understand what that purpose is, to organize. And we're going to talk about organizing. But before I talk about organizing, if I asked the group here, what is a community organizer? Or what does it mean to be an organizer? How many of you would be comfortable in answering that question? You find something. You go, and you're hit with a purpose. You're struck, you're disrupted. And a purpose is now found. I need a better education. I need a stoplight so that my kid doesn't get run over because this is a busy intersection. I need to get something struck down in a local law, or I need a local governing office to understand XYZ, whatever it is. And then you organize your people, you find people who agree with you, you bring them together, you talk about why it's important, you make sure that it's important amongst everybody else, and then you work to change it, you work to overcome it, you work to empower yourselves to make it change. The greatest community organizer that ever lived, who is it? Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam. Recite a salawat. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam, he would look at somebody and he understood that we were all different. He would look at his family, he would look at his companions, he would look at them, he would find out what they're best at, and he would use that. So he understood that each person had a talent, and he was beautiful at picking out the talents of people and not overburdening somebody else with work that maybe doesn't fit their talents or fit their purposes. For example, he understood that Bilal was very powerful at using his voice to bring people together, to soften people's hearts. So that's why he used Bilal. Salman, why did he use Salman? Salman was a great diplomat. He understood how to communicate with other people, how to translate. He had the power of language. He used Salman in this way. Abu Dhar, what is Abu Dhar? Abu Dhar was, some people, to the discredit of some people, or the credit of some people, however you want to look at it, some people argue that Abu Dhar might be the first Islamic, I don't know how the word is seen here, but a socialist, because he would make sure at every joint and juncture that there was equity in whatever decision was being made, whatever was happening. He wanted to make sure everybody had their place, everybody had their role, and he was really good at it. So the Prophet Muhammad used him in that way. And not just the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We can look at the Imams. The Imams, they all understood their people. They understood who was around them. They didn't overburden anybody with something they couldn't do. But if they could do something, they highlighted it. They celebrated it. They said this person is good at XYZ, and they made sure the rest of the community understood it so that they could be used. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, one big power, or one big compassion in organizing, as I keep saying, is not overburdening somebody. So when Imam Hussein was trekking, when he was moving with his family towards that fateful day in Karbala, what did he do? He did many things. He continually highlighted the good works of many people, and then also, what did he do? He would make sure that they would shut down the fire, shut down the lights, so whoever needed to leave would leave. He knew that those who were loyal, they wouldn't leave. But if they weren't loyal, it was safer for them to get out of the way, because they might become an impediment in what they were going to do. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the greatest community organizer that ever lived. The A'imma, they all followed in his tradition, and we can go back to Prophet Musa to understand that we need to look at our lives, and it might be something greater than what we think our lives are about. If we're at a university, we might think that we're there just for an education to become a journalist or a kinesiologist, and we might have a purpose to call out, to build something, to create a program that'll last forever. Maybe my purpose is to find a church, an old church, a historic church, a beautiful building, and repurpose it so that the Muslim community has a place that everybody feels welcome. I heard something tonight that this is going to be either the first or one of the first Islamic centers in the area that's not going to cater to a particular group of people. It's going to be open to everybody. That's what I heard. Is that right? So it's going to be open to all ethnicities. It's going to be open for everybody to have programs in English that they could all understand. That means somebody understood it, somebody got disrupted, somebody wasn't comfortable with something else that was going on. They worked hard, they organized themselves, they got a place, and they're building another strength or asset for the community.
There is power in all of us. And when we say we're empowering communities, it doesn't mean that, as an outsider, I'm coming in to say, oh, I'm so sorry, sister, you're so helpless. Here, let me give you some power so you can make your life better. Absolutely not. That's not the example we're giving. What we're talking about is we all have the potential inside of us. We all have the ability inside of us, and we have this inherent power, and we want to talk about how we utilize it to make sure we get what we want for our communities, and that our needs as Muslim communities, as minority communities, as communities of color, marginalized communities, that we're making sure our needs are met too. And Canada does a better job of this than we do in America, but we're going to go over some of this as well. So I'm going to share a couple principles of power that we talk about in organizing and kind of explain what we mean by this term power, and then we'll go over what it looks like in real life. So one of the first things is, and I like to keep notes, so power is the ability to act with a purpose. So power is not just something you have in the context of organizing because you have a lot of money, and that means you're powerful, or because you're in an elected position, and just because you're a prime minister or a senator, or what are the other positions of government in Canadian government? And yes, thank you. That you're holding power because you're in an elected position. No, we're saying that when you have power, it's because you have the ability to act to accomplish a certain purpose. So Reza laid out a couple different examples of those purposes. Maybe it is to build a safer community. Maybe it's to stop police violence. Maybe it's to help solve issues with homelessness or poverty. But you as a community have identified that this is a purpose we want, and now we have the ability to act on it. And how do we build power? In our communities, we say that we build power through relationships with each other. So how many of us in the Muslim community have seen examples where the community is very fragmented, people don't care about each other, and then pieces of the communities break off, we lose members of the communities, and it just becomes this community that doesn't really do much and doesn't hold a lot of influence? Have we seen that happen in the Muslim community? I've seen that. I'm from Chicago. It happens in Chicago, it happens in California, it happens in a lot of places. We know that in order to become a powerful community, we need to be in relationship with each other. So that means our brotherhood relationships, our sisterhood relationships, because when we're in relationship, when we care about each other as individuals, when we know each other, when we take time to learn about each other's stories, our backgrounds, our struggles, what pain we deal with, what challenges our families have, that's when you care about the other person. So if I know Mahdi, and I know she has a young daughter who's going to be going to public school soon in a year or two. So I know that she's thinking about this, if you don't mind me sharing, Mahdi, she's thinking about, my daughter wears hijab, I need to go talk to the school, make sure they understand some of the challenges that might come with hijab. And so now if I was here in Vancouver, I would say, Mahdi, I would like to come with you. Can I help you? Can I be there to talk to the principal? Can I talk to the teacher with you? We can make a presentation together. Do we need to bring more women? Do we need to bring brothers for support? Because now I care about her. I know what she's thinking about, I know her family, and that makes her more powerful. Because now she's not going to show up alone, she's going to show up with me, inshallah one day, and with other people in the community. And when we're disconnected, and when we're fragmented, and we try to show up to somebody who has a lot of money and considers themselves powerful, or they hold an elected office and they consider themselves powerful, are they going to take us seriously?
No. So if I show up to Jeff Bezos, who's the richest man in the world in the history of the universe probably, the Amazon CEO, and I show up to his office in Seattle, I think it's probably in Seattle, and I say, Jeff Bezos, I do not like how you treat your workers. There is Muslims that are working in your warehouses and people are passing out and they're dying from, not dying, but they're passing out from fatigue and overwork, and you need to change the system. Is Jeff Bezos going to listen to me? No, I hold no power to him. He doesn't care. But if I start building relationships with the communities that have those Somali Muslims in Minnesota that actually got Amazon to change the laws of the way the warehouses operate, or I build relationships with communities who have family members who are employees, and I bring all of them with me, and we have 500 people show up at Jeff Bezos' office, and we sit down and we say, we're not going to leave until you change something. Are they going to take us more seriously then? Yeah, we need to be in relationship with each other. And then finally, I want to add that power respects power. So just like the example I shared, someone who holds power is only going to respect someone who understands what power means and how to use it and how to hold people accountable. So we need to understand these principles when we're organizing in our communities, because then we know how to be strategic to accomplish what we want, to make sure that in some communities they're getting Eid as a holiday from school, or in some communities they're changing the rules to allow people to wear beards if they're police officers, or wear hijab in different positions that they weren't allowed to before. We need to be strategic about how we accomplish these wins for our communities and understand how these people in power actually think and operate to get what we want. Does that make sense? All right. Next set of principles, because we're also going to talk about civic engagement. So when we want to have power to do something, most of the time we have to talk to an elected official. So if I want to get a stop sign on the corner outside my masjid, I have to go to City Hall. In our context, we call it City Hall. If at the state level I want to pass a law where the justice system is not punishing people of color more than they're punishing white people, I have to go to state level government. If I want to go to our federal government and say, you are not allowed to pass a Muslim ban in the United States where only certain people from Muslim countries cannot come, I have to talk to federal elected officials. So for us, it would be congressmen. So we need to learn, how do we organize our resources that we have in our communities in order to accomplish these goals? And when we talk about the resources we have in our communities, we look at them in three ways. We say we have bodies, we have ballots, and we have bucks. So when we talk about bodies, that means people. We have physical people and physical bodies. MashaAllah, you have a huge Muslim community here. So what are some examples? How could we use people or numbers of large people to accomplish something, or try to make a point or hold someone accountable? You can just raise your hand maybe or shout it out. What's one way that you've seen people do that? Use protests, perfect. Protests are examples of doing that. What else? Petitions? Yeah, good. Petitions, you sign lots of people's names and show that these many people in a certain area want something to change. Beautiful. How about one more? Yes? Write a letter. Yeah, so lots of people could write letters together and make sure that we say that it's not just one person who wants it, but hundreds of people in our community want it. One other hand? Participating in elections. So you're jumping to our next one. Hold your thought. I'm going to go to bucks, and then we'll come to the best one at the end. What is the way? Bucks is money. So we have to make it rhyme, right? Body, ballot. So how do we use our money to accomplish what we want? What's one way to do that? Or to make a statement, or to demand a change? Boycotting. So using our money to boycott products that support the oppression of Palestinians, that continue the apartheid in Israel, and when we get masses of people to not buy those things, is going to make a statement to those companies. So we've actually seen companies stop funding governments like Israel, or stop doing things that are harming other communities because of the efforts of the BDS movement. So there are college campuses where students have come together and demanded changes and have boycotted Sabra Hummus. If you guys have Sabra here? Sabra Hummus funds Israeli occupation of Palestine, and they force their institutions to withdraw money from supporting Israel. Were you going to say something? Okay, that's great. And then what is maybe one more example of using money? How else can we use it? Okay, fundraising. So fundraising is another way we can pool our resources in a community to accomplish things. So you're saying create awareness for campaigns, like sometimes people buy ads, like the Who's Hussein campaign brings money together and gets a big giant sign in New York Times Square to raise awareness about who Imam Hussein is, right? So beautiful. So fundraising to accomplish our cause. Perfect. So finally, we're going to go back to ballots. So our brother said voting in elections, using our voting power. And then we've also, I'm going to just put the answer here, talked about how we hold our elected officials accountable. So do you think, maybe in Canada it's different, when an elected official is running for office, whether it's your county, your city, your province, I'm trying to use Canadian language, or larger, are they thinking about how the Muslim community is going to vote in what their campaign platforms are? Do they think about that? I'm asking you here because I don't know. No. Do they care about what we think and what we want? No. Who do they care about? People who are going to vote for them. Can you say louder here? The lobbyists who convince them what to do, and the majority. And generally, who are the people who do vote that they listen to? White people and men, older, rich, old white people. That's who they listen to. That's true for Fresno and all of America, literally. So elected officials or people who are running for positions listen to the people they know are going to vote for them. And who turns out to vote? White people, rich people, and older people. Young people in America, we can vote at 18. Actually, 18 to 24 are one of the groups of people that vote the least. And our communities of color, our minority religious communities, our minority ethnic communities do not turn out to vote. So they do not care what we have to say. And what we are trying to emphasize here is until we build voting power, until we get our people to actually cast their ballots and make their voices heard and care about who becomes a local judge or a county supervisor or gets on school board, no one's going to pay attention to us. Because we cannot hold our elected officials accountable. We cannot go to their offices and say, hey, you said you were going to do this and you didn't do it. And they're going to say, oh, I didn't get to it, we ran out of money, I have so many other problems, because they know they don't care about your vote later on. But if we become a voting bloc and they care about what Muslims say, when Muslims go to their offices, are you guys with me? When Muslims go to our elected officials' offices and they say, you didn't do this that you were going to do for our community, you were going to help build a new road or a new park, or you were going to make sure our homeless have a new shelter, you didn't do it. They're going to say, oh, the Muslim community votes. They have 5,000 Muslims in Surrey that are voting regularly. I got to listen to them because they could vote me out of office. So that's why we talk about the power of civic engagement and why it's so important to make sure that our community is becoming educated on the power of voting and making sure we're actually using that as a tool. So I'll share one example very quickly on how we did this in Fresno with the Muslim community's participation and what it looks like when we're going into next year. So in Fresno, in the Central Valley, we have a large immigrant population. We have a lot of community members that don't have citizenship and they're undocumented. And after Trump came into office, as you know, he made a huge attack on undocumented immigrants. So we got a lot of ICE officials coming into our communities, raiding people's homes, going to businesses, and deporting people very, very quickly. And our communities were under attack. Not just Latino communities, but also Asian communities, African communities, Southeast Asian, Middle Eastern. It impacts everybody. And so we came together as a community to say, what can we do? How do we make sure that we help protect our communities, because this is something we care about. And we knew we couldn't stop ICE. Sometimes we can use our bodies, and you might have seen footage of people like sitting down on the roads in front of buses or going to the detention facilities and doing protests. We did all of that, but we knew we also needed a safety net. And we needed money for these immigrants so they could get lawyers, so when they went to immigration court, they would actually have funding to hire a lawyer. And so what we did is we used our bodies, we went to City Hall 2 weeks in a row, June 14th and June 21st of 2017. We filled City Hall with 200 people 2 weeks in a row. We did 3 hours of public comment in City Hall. 50 people spoke and said, you need to give money to a legal defense fund so our immigrants can have an opportunity to get a lawyer so that they won't be deported, they can actually have representation. Our friends, our Muslim communities, our interfaith allies, everyone came and spoke. We went back again and spoke, and City Hall shut us down because Fresno is conservative and they do not support immigrant communities. And we got shut down. We tried, we did bodies, we got shut down. So we went to Bucks. We went to private donors in the community, and we started asking people to give money, just fundraise. We went to foundations and philanthropic donors, and we started asking them for money, that we need to create a fund, we need to help our immigrant communities, can you support us? So alhamdulillah, we created a fund with $100,000, now over $100,000 over the past year. We've been able to help about 6 to 8 families, including one Syrian family that was seeking asylum. And now we're going back to our city hall because we have some new people who are in office, and there's going to be an election next year. For 2 or 3 city council members are up for election. And we're asking them, you shut us down last year, next year, are you going to give money into a legal defense fund from the budget, from the city budget? If you do, we will vote for you. If you don't, we will not support you in this race. And so we're going back and we're saying we're holding our elected officials accountable to make sure that they're on our side for the issues that we care about, because otherwise all these communities of color that care about this issue are not going to support them and they're not going to vote for them. So we're getting them to agree now, before they get into office, that they're going to do this so that when they get into office, we can hold them accountable again.
In Fresno, when we wanted to build this legal defense fund, say the Muslims wanted to do it, and it was our idea, we led it. Do you think Muslims can do it alone? No. What it took was deep relationship work to build relationships across religious lines, across philosophical lines, to find ways that we could come together and organize outside of the Muslim community as well. Because you can work as hard as you want in the Muslim community, but being outside of the Muslim community, Jazakallah khair. Living outside of the Muslim community, it takes more than just Muslims to push forward policy, to push forward change. You have to find partners that are willing to work with you and fight with you and be in the gutter with you and be in the streets with you, whatever it takes to bring about the change that the Muslim community needs. So we like to talk about deep relationship building, and we like to talk about silos. These are 2 concepts that are real. They're real in our world, and sometimes we don't think about it. First of all, when you're doing something, when you're moving something forward, when you're trying to build a policy, when you're trying to build power, the reality is that too many of us put our own selves in silos, like these glasses of water. We find what glass works for me, and I go into that glass, and I never look what's happening in the other glass. We silo ourselves. We say, I'm going to fight for the Muslim ban, but I don't really care what they're doing at the US-Mexico border. It doesn't affect me. That means I'm siloing out my work. I'm finding ways that I want to do things, and I'm not really caring about where other people are suffering. So we have to get out of these silos. We have to find ways to stretch past. The most important thing you can do to do that is to build relationships. In Fresno, we do have something good. I was telling the Sheikh earlier about why he says he hasn't been to Fresno. I said, because there was nothing to bring you to Fresno. Because there's a lot of stuff in Fresno that would push somebody out. I don't know what Abu Mahdi saw in Fresno to come out and join us. But it's a desert. Poverty rate is high. Water is terrible. Air is the worst in the nation. The racism runs deep. But we have interfaith partners. And we found ways to build relationships. And we found ways to build relationships in a very proactive way, not a reactive way. I think most of us, when we build relationships outside of our own community, we're reacting to something. For example, a center might be attacked, might be graffitied. Hopefully, inshallah, that never happens to the center here. Our center was attacked twice. So the center might get attacked. They smash it up, they damage things, they cause problems, and everybody comes out, ooh, we're so sad for what happened. We're here for you, brother. We're here for you, sister. We're defending you. And then they go home, and that's it. Because all they're doing is reacting to something that happened. A synagogue gets attacked. There's a mass shooting somewhere. We all get together, we sing Kumbaya, and we go home. We didn't really do any relationship building. We only came together because something happened, and it was the right thing to do, to stand up for another human being that was suffering. If you reverse a little bit, if you rewind a little bit, and you start to develop relationships, you start to go across this. When we went to the center earlier, and I'm forgetting the name unfortunately, Az-Zahra Mosque. We went to Az-Zahra earlier, and I looked, and along the way, it looks like it's a row of religion. I think there's like temples and churches, and there's a Gurudwara and an Islamic center, just one after another. And I was thinking, wow, imagine the work that they can do, not just building up these beautiful buildings, but what if they got together? They're all immigrant communities. They literally could change the face of Canadian politics. They could change what Vancouver looked like. Although, mashallah, it's looked good so far. This is my first day ever in Vancouver, and I've liked what I've seen. But they can make big changes if they were to build relationships. If they were to understand that the person sitting across from them was not just a non-Muslim, but was another human being, was another a creation of God, was somebody who was imbued with the same dignity that I was imbued with. And if we look at somebody else as another of what we are, because we're all equal, we're all equally created. The only thing that makes us better or worse is our own deeds, but in nature, in creation, we're the same. So if you were to look at the next brother or sister and say, I see you, I see who you are, I understand who you are, you belong here just as much as I belong here, you start to develop a relationship, a real relationship, one that you actually care about what's going on the other side of the fence. So now it doesn't take an attack for me to go to visit a synagogue, or it doesn't take a mass shooting for me to go to the school or the university. I'm just there because it is what it is. It's my friend. It's somebody that I believe that I can make a change with. So you build real relationships. And when you build real relationships, you don't react to anything. You're proactive. Something happens, everybody's just there. And now it's not a big deal that the pastor or the rabbi or the imam showed up to something. It's just normal. And when we normalize working together, we can accomplish a lot, brothers and sisters. We have a lot of examples throughout the world and throughout our countries and throughout our areas that we live of times that we've won, of times that we've got outside of our silos, we've exited the walls that keep us separated, we've found ways to work together, and we won something. Some small things, some big things. It is what it is. Not all of our victories are huge. For example, I forget what year, about 3 years ago, we wanted to get the City Council of Fresno, who had recognized many communities in the past and never said anything about the Muslim community. A Muslim community, just like anywhere else, is productive, that builds, that establishes, that has infrastructure, that is contributing to society, and our city has never even understood nor recognized it. So we worked. And how did we work? We met with every city council member, we met with the mayor, we met with the city manager, we had community meetings, and we brought interfaith partners into the discussions. So when I would go sit with a city council member and tell them why they need to take time to honor the Muslim community, I was sitting with a pastor or a rabbi or somebody who was a community organizer. Why? Not because I needed this person to be there to justify who I was, but because we were working on it together because we understood each other as humans. So when I work for their issues or things that seem to be their issues, they're going to be there for me as well. And you do it, and then alhamdulillah, they recognize the city passed the resolution honoring the Muslim community, thanking the Muslim community for being part of Fresno and part of what makes Fresno Fresno. It's a small win. And we've had big wins too. We have a lot of problems in Fresno, as I keep mentioning. One of the beautiful things we have is a very powerful interfaith community. A man named Dr. Robert Sellers, who's the chair of the Parliament of the World's Religions, is the largest religious organization in the world, said that Fresno has a beautiful or the most thriving interfaith community that he'd ever seen. It seems like a small victory, but it was huge. And that comes out in many ways. We have a clergy caucus that is going and building or helping build legal defense funds. And another example of a win, of organizing with other folks. You guys, we were talking about the Muslim ban. When number 45 came to power, he was talking about bans and he was talking about walls. It seems all he talked about was attacking the Muslim community and attacking our Latinx brothers and sisters, people who are trying to come across the border for whatever issue. He was attacking Muslims and Mexicans, basically. So what did we do? We said, okay, we have two communities who have a lot in common. I mean, we have a lot of history in common. We have a lot of understanding in common. We have a lot of family values in common. We have a lot in common if we were only to step outside of our own box. So we said, he's banning people and he's building walls. So we got together with some local Mexican activists, and Sukaina and myself got together and we figured out what can we do. And we put on a series of programs. I don't know if you guys heard about them here, but it was bringing the Muslim community and the Latinx, the Mexican community together about things that brought us together. So they would have poetry from both communities, simple things, art from both communities, simple things, food from both communities, simple things, conversations, discussions about shared histories and shared pasts and shared values, things that brought people together to the heart, right? Not just academically. Now, I can tell you that Spain was a Muslim country for 800. What does that mean? It means nothing unless I can look in somebody's face and say, I see something in you that's the same in me. And we brought people together for a series, but then it didn't stop in bringing people together for events. What it culminated in is, do you guys have Labor Day here? Where you honor the work of those people that have toiled the soil so that we could live the life that we live. So on Labor Day, it culminated in an action where we got together a large group of Muslims and Mexican people to march through downtown Fresno, to occupy a space near the courthouse, and to share stories of what it meant to be together, and to work together, and to fight together, and to say, you're not going to ban Muslims from coming. That's what our Latinx brothers and sisters said. And the Muslims said, you're not going to build walls. And if we have to find ways to fight you, that's what we're going to do. Because that's what it means to be civically engaged. That's what it means to bring people together. That's what it means to build infrastructure, so that when we look forward in the future, we say more. And mashallah, I'm not saying that it's not beautiful to build a mosque. Of course it's beautiful. Just as Sayyid Mehdi mentioned that we're standing on stolen lands. You know, we're also standing on the shoulders of giants who came before us, right? We're thankful that people came before us to build institutions, to build mosques, to build places for us to grow or our children to grow. But now it's time to step outside and say, what does it mean to build outside of the mosque? And one of the ways to do it is to build relationships, to organize, to bring people together, and look forward and fight. And all of us have something that we want to fight for. Every single one of us. None of us, this life is a struggle. So not a single person can say, alhamdulillah, everything's perfect. No, there's something you're supposed to fight for. You're in this world to struggle. What is your struggle? Might be different than mine, but if I can find ways that we can connect on whatever the issue is, we can find ways to make changes that are going to be big, that are going to be valuable for us, and are going to change the world that our children live in. It's going to change the world that our grandchildren live in, because they're going to look back, like we're saying, we're standing on the shoulders of great leaders who came before us. Then they're going to say we're standing on the shoulders of people who saw that, as the one quote said, that they believed that their home was not where their grandparents were buried, but where their grandchildren will make their life. So it's a legacy that we have to live on. It's a legacy that we have to move on. Because all of us, as Cornel West said, we got to make this world a little bit better than we came into it, right? We got to leave it better than we came into it. And that's all that community organizing is about. That's all that building power is about. That's all that building relationships are about. That's what civic engagement's about. That's what interfaith work and value is about. It's about making the world better than the world that we stepped into. And all of us can find something along the way to fight for, to work for in the name of the entire community.
All right. So we have one more section to finish up with. You guys still okay? 5 more minutes? Okay. So I'm going to ask Sayyid Mehdi, do you mind passing this out? This is part 2 of the drawing writing activity. For this section, I'm going to ask you, now that you've heard about the possibility, we have this world with a lot of challenges, but we have an opportunity to change it. We have a responsibility to change it and to make it better. So what is the world as it should be? If you could imagine any world you want to live in, if you had a magic wand, let's say, that's not halal, but if you had a magic wand and you could make the world anything you wanted to world, I don't know, it's debatable, it's not. What would your world look like? What is the world as it should be? What is the world as Islam wants the world to be? What is your ideal vision? So what does your neighborhood look like? What do the relationships look like? What kind of communities are people living in? What are they experiencing? How do they feel? So I'm going to ask you to take 2-3 minutes and just write, what is the world as it should be? Acceptance, beautiful. We want to create a world with acceptance for all communities. How about brother side? Purposeful, good. We see a greater purpose as we talked about for ourselves. MashaAllah, beautiful. Yes?
Less poverty and violence.
Yeah, how about no poverty and violence? Let's just make it perfect. No poverty and violence, beautiful. How about brother side? Social justice, good, on all issues, racial, economic, environmental. And then, do you have one in the back? Equality, good.
Equality across races, genders, ethnicity. Last one. Safety, good. We should feel safe in this beautiful world. So I want to show you all something. We talked about, just to hang on with me one more minute, we talked about building power, we talked about civic engagement, we talked about finding our purpose, because we want to take this world as it is, with all of these problems and poverty and all these bad issues, and we want to make it into the world as it should be. This is the goal we're working towards, inshallah, and we all have a role to play in this. So in the Fresno community, we have been working very hard about getting Muslims out to vote. Last 2018 elections, we had groups of volunteers, Muslim youth, Muslim adults, who were making phone calls to 1,500 registered Muslim voters in Fresno County. So I know you all have many, many more than that, but our goal was just to talk to Muslims and say, even if there are issues like this, maybe you're not dealing with poverty, maybe you have citizenship and you don't need to worry about your citizenship, but you still have a responsibility to vote as an act of love for your community, as an act of justice for your community. So I may have the privilege of citizenship, but I'm going to vote for someone who's going to help protect immigrants out of love for those immigrant communities, and because Islam calls me to justice. I may not be a young black brother or sister who's getting persecuted by the police, but I'm going to vote, or getting killed by the police in our country, I'm going to vote to make sure we have a district attorney that holds police officers accountable as an act of justice and as an act of love. So this goes beyond trying to get to this world. It's not selfish. It's not just for ourselves. It's for the greater communities that we have a responsibility to, and it's our greater purpose, as we've talked about earlier.
Thank you for your question. So she asked that it takes a long time to build relationships with other communities to do an action, and it does. It's an investment of love. It's an investment of justice. And if you want something good, you've got to invest in it, and you've got to put time into it. So with the brothers and sisters in the Latinx community that we worked with, the leader that we worked with, I've had a relationship with him for a long time. So there was already some trust that he understood that I wasn't going to throw him under the bus, and I knew he wasn't going to throw me under the bus as well. So we had already a long-standing relationship. But when it came time for this project, you couldn't do it just 3 people. We had to bring in other folks. So we had a lot of time meetings. We had a lot of time standing in. We had a lot of time seeing each other at different rallies and protests. We had a lot of time seeing each other at each other's communities. So that way there's a sense of trust. If you don't trust somebody, it's very hard to organize with them, because you all know that somebody will throw you under the bus very easily. They'll get what they want and they'll move on. So yeah, it's really hard. It takes a lot of time. But it's worth it. Whatever time it takes, it's worth every single minute that you put in to building relationships. Not because you want to change them to be like you, or you want to change them to be something else. Sometimes that's the problem, is when we get into a relationship with somebody, not a marriage relationship, when you get into a brother-brother, sister-sister relationship and you're trying to pull them over, sometimes it seems like we're just trying to get them to be like us. Just agree with us, just be like us. And that's not really going to build this kind of relationship. That, you need to just look at each other, see who are, is Sawubona? Yeah, there's the saying Sawubona, which is a Zulu saying, which just means I see you. And then the response is that if somebody says, I see you, you say, then I'm here. So just knowing that the person that you're trying to build a relationship with, you're doing it out of sincerity, that you want to find ways to move forward and build power, then it can happen, but it takes some time.
Like up to a year, 6 months to a year, or that kind of time frame.
Before we ever had an action, when you're doing community organizing or trying to bring people together, you have to first know that you're doing it for Allah and you're doing it for the community. When you're trying to work for Allah and the community, you have to give up your time and self. And sometimes it takes that year of struggle. And sometimes you're like, I'm tired. This is not going anywhere. I feel like we're at a dead end. But knowing that you're working for Allah means that you sacrifice yourself and your time and you just do it. Because something good is going to come out of it, inshallah.
Ahsantum, thank you so much to our guest speakers. I cannot express our utmost gratitude for you guys coming here and sharing your knowledge. Inshallah, we have all benefited, and inshallah, we start working harder to be very engaged in our civic community, inshallah. And so yeah, thank you guys so much for coming.